Over the course of this year, I experienced a 180 in my life. Physically, mentally, emotionally, all that jazz, which greatly influenced my Humanities project. If you want to know how I went from having my heart set on dancing to my own original song trilogy to tangibly producing an hour-long one-act radio play, then please keep on watching. In, I believe, the summer of my sophomore year, I stumbled upon a video by a YouTuber I liked at the time, Gabby Hannah. Turns out it was a music video for an original song she wrote. And there are spurts throughout it where she, without lip-syncing along, is just dancing to the music. In that moment, I thought that was the coolest concept. I'd never really seen someone solely dancing to their own song without lip-syncing. Like they were competing in a dance competition and their song just happened to be the one that played in a company. From there on out, I saved the idea in the back of my mind, promising to fulfill my desire of dancing along to an original song of mine as my epic end-all be-all senior year project. Once senior year hit, however, the vision I had my eyes set on for the year's project gradually dissipated. I was in a much different headspace in autumn, overwhelmed by the state of the world and paralyzed in fear. I thought I had a really good opportunity to use this song and dance project as a creative outlet. As the season and year went on, however, for time's sake, I'll just say my mental health luckily improved drastically, and this project grew irrelevant for me. I kept pushing for it, though, for quite some time, even though I knew I wasn't into it. This project turned into a burden for me, and the only reason I stuck with it at this point was because I felt like my life had to match the movie narrative I set up all those years ago in my head and stick to this old amateur idea I once fully resonated with. And I won't get far in life if I keep repeating this habit. About 3.5 months ago, I was given the opportunity to get directly involved in Del Barton's One Act Festival. And by one act, they're referring to a one-act play, which is typically around 30-ish minutes. So yes, that's what I've been up to for these last few months, and that, from the start, grabbed all my attention. So that was lesson 1. I don't have to stick to something I'm no longer interested in. I'm allowed to let myself grow to be different than the person I was yesterday, and advance beyond the thoughts and desires I had yesterday. I'm allowed to follow my heart, because involving myself in the specific objective that's on my mind is how I'll serve productive results to the best of my ability. Because it's where my passion lies, which is the foundation of it all. Without passion, what's the point of any of this? Once I decided to simultaneously make my one-act project my Humanities project, that's when I really hit the ground running, and it's within the process of creating said one act where all the rest of the lessons flooded in. If there is anything that has taught me to really dig my heels into the design thinking process, it's this project. When I see a visual depiction of the process today and see the 5 steps of said design thinking process, I know I really succeeded this year. Once I got to the point where I finally found the project that was right for me, I found myself legitimately empathizing, defining, ideating, prototyping, and testing, all in ways I hadn't embraced in the past before. And specifically for my project, emphasizing equaled figuring out which types of stories resonated with me and my writer mind, defining equaled determining what exactly my show was going to be about, what I wanted it to be about. Ideating equaled writing out that idea of what my show's about via script dialogue, while of course readjusting based off feedback. Prototyping equaled playing these written scenes out with the actor, including test recordings and seeing what flowed and what didn't. And testing equaled officially recording. Like I said, all of this definitely started with empathizing. One Saturday night, my parents and I found ourselves engaged in this very deep conversation about the history of our family, which specifically included me listening to family stories from before my time. I'm 15 years younger than my sister and 12 years younger than my brother, so there are a lot of these to choose from. Now, speaking of my brother, one story that hooked me the most that night was a story my mom told about how she managed to stop my brother from nearly getting on the town train and officially running away from home. Yikes. The thing she said that got me thinking about it for a while afterwards was how that's the one thing she regrets about parenting my brother. How she didn't just let him go. Because she feels like a lot of things might be different right now if she had let him run off and have his chance to get the rebellious side out of him. After the end of our talk, I went upstairs and found myself not being able to stop thinking about it. Following that raw feeling in my gut after hearing my mom's story, really listening to it. That's what got me my show story. Whoa! Habits of mind to note within this stage include the following. Empathy. Like I said, I felt empathetic, especially via the story my mom told me, and how much I allowed myself to realize that story struck a chord within me, you know? So I'd also written a piece for my creative writing class that I'd really resonated with, and for both this and the idea my mom's anecdote gave me for a story, I thought, man, I really wish I could just put these out there somehow. When this opportunity to write for One Acts came up, even though I truly didn't know what I was getting myself into whatsoever, I once again followed that raw feeling in my gut and told the director I had material to bounce off of for developing an official script. From there, it was really a non-stop grind. Barely a moment went by for the next 2.5 months where I wasn't spending time on progressing the content of my show. This is where I really honed in on the art of brain dumping whatever ideas I possibly had, no matter the quality, onto the paper and just moving along, which is heavily emphasized in Humanities class. Normally for my writing process, if I was stuck on something, I'd ruminate over it and not stop till I found what in my eyes was the perfect solution to the problem. In spite of this familiar pattern of mine, this time around, I really wanted to embrace a key component of Humanities, which is learning by failure, since no one grows from something if they get it right the first time. Plus, this switch up ended up working out better for my emotional stability. The less emotionally attached I was to my writing, the greater chance I had at being able to accept feedback more easily. I'm so defensive when it comes to that stuff. I've internally dramatized feedback in the past to the point where I think to myself, I'm being attacked right now. This time, I pushed myself to show authentically rough drafts. Like I said, it was easier to accept feedback this way, to my surprise, because I often agreed with the changes people suggested for me to make. Practicing these new habits I just mentioned a second ago helped me produce 70 pages in 2 weeks. I had to cut that down quite a bit, but I had a lot of content to work with. Habits of mind to note in this stage include the following. Open-mindedness, and really trying to do things based off what I heard, not who it came from. Persistence. Instead of submitting to the black void that was my fear and anxiety trying to swallow me whole on a pretty regular basis, I let myself believe that I could beat my doubts to the light at the end of every tunnel. And I did just that. Now, this is when my actors acted out their scenes while unofficially recording said scenes to prepare for the real recording session. The final stage of production. This is when the official recordings took place. This definitely pushed a more dominant side out of me, as I had to take charge as the director and hone my team's energy in if we wanted to get anything done. There were also many complications during the recording process, which included one of my actors having so many conflicts with our schedule that they ended up having to record the vast majority of their lines at home on their phone instead of at Del Barton with a something $100 mic the school purchased solely for these productions. This especially forced me to once again assert myself when said actor was not recording their lines in a timely fashion, to the point where I briefly considered recasting their character. I decided to let the actor in on this piece of information, that I was having this thought of recasting. I'm not trying to blackmail them, manipulate them, anything like that. Just hoping it'd be the final push they needed to get themselves together a bit more. No offense, love you. It did. I got an entire recording of most of their lines just a few days later. Point to me. Alrighty, to close out, here are the habits of mind that were prevalent throughout the entire process of creating my show. Reflectiveness. This came from realizing I had a lot of moments where I thought, oh my gosh, this literally isn't even that bad. Why didn't I just get started on this way sooner? Intrinsic motivation. I really just let my passion for the show's story carry me through each step of the process. That was a huge motivator, genuinely. Even the moments where I felt like I was on the edge of snapping out of total annoyance from this project altogether. Love that for me. Lastly, courage. One of the most, if not the most, prevalent habit of mine during my journey by far. The amount of times I'd prepare for a virtual or in-person rehearsal and feel my heart doing flip-flops is immeasurable. I had plenty of moments where, emotionally, I was a complete and utter train wreck. Moments where I feared what the actors would say about certain scenes. Moments where I constantly second-guessed myself, my authority, my entire purpose in putting on the show. Moments where I thought to myself, why? Why couldn't you just let yourself coast for these last few months, dog? Is it supposed to be this hard doing something you care so much about? The answer is yes. Yes, it is. Because in those moments, I had to recenter myself and embrace this mantra. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. By realizing I went out of my way to grow further as a person during the second half of my senior year, a time where no one really expects a whole lot out of you, you know. The fact that I just have this innate desire to grow constantly truly made me realize just how much ambition I hold inside of me, how hungry I am to get all that I can out of life, even if it means facing some of my biggest fears on a daily basis. Going into life after high school, I'm forever grateful I had this amazing opportunity to gain a newfound sense of leadership like never before. Soon, it'll be up to me to advocate for myself. And through these lessons I've learned, I feel more prepared than ever. Thanks for watching.